His name was Leroy Page, but everyone knew him as Satchel. God gave him a fastball, a quick wit, and a gift for showmanship that made his name immortal. Born in the segregated South, he rose to the top of the national pastime. He was the first black to pitch in a World Series. Like Louis Armstrong and Joe Louis, Page was a symbol of achievement and accomplishment for all black Americans. Satchel pitched for more than 40 years on makeshift rural sandlots and in major league ballparks against the best in the game. He was the most celebrated player in the Negro Leagues, and because some victories came against white major league opponents, he set the stage for baseball's integration. Satchel Paige was an extraordinary athlete and a genuine American original.
He was the most natural guy on the pitching mound that I'd ever seen. It just wasn't nothing wrong he could do on the pitcher's mound.
He was made for baseball, and he pleased so many people. And again, once you saw him, you never forget him.
Satchel enjoyed it, and when he enjoyed it most was when he was pitching against Josh Gibson or Ruth, the great ball players. Then, he would shine. He would really shine.
He was cantankerous at times. If you wanted him to zig, he'd zag. But that was all part of him. You know, he was the perfect baseball person. You know, he was made to pitch. He was made to entertain, and he did both of them very, very well.
We'd be on the field. Finally, somebody would say, "Hey, Satchel just showed up," and boy, it was just like the sun coming out from behind a cloud.
It's amazing. How old is he? Well, Bill Beck, you could never answer the question, and Satchel wouldn't tell you. So Bill had found out where his mother was, and he called his mother. Now, Satchel had pre-warned her, I know, because her answer was, when they asked him how old he was, he said, I can't rightfully recall whether he was my first or my 14th child. So that gave him a leeway of 15 to 20 years.
He said that his mother wrote down the day he was born in the Bible when he was born down in the South, but the goat ate the Bible, so they really didn't know.
The inevitable question came up to him every time there was an interview, how old are you? And he says, I'm as old as I feel.
Because everybody, Jack, think I'm so old and I cannot do this and I cannot do the other, and I want to show them that I can still play baseball regardless if they don't know my age. If they think I'm 107, it's still all right.
Well, I don't know how old you are, Satch, and maybe the other ball players don't either, but that fastball of yours looks just as good as it did many years ago.
Jack, I'm going to tell you the truth. I don't think it but a very few people in the United States know my age or where I come from even now, let alone know my age, because I've been playing ever since I was a kid. I never had a job. But still, they say I'm 100 years old, and everybody I meet, they say they played ball with me. Some of them's 100, some of them's 85 and 90.
Well, I think the most accurate thing you could say about Satchel and people like Satchel in Mobile was that they didn't officially exist. That's how degraded they were. There were no records of them in the census, in the medical records, in any kind of city directories, which led, incidentally, to the great myth of his age, because no one could ever quite figure it out, although the information was there. But when Page was growing up, he was a non-citizen. He didn't exist, basically. And of course, it went along with that growing up, he never had any possessions, anything of material value, not even shoes. So when he talked about his childhood later on in life, about shoes, they were for other people, he wasn't exaggerating. He had a way of exaggerating everything. But when he talked about growing up in poverty in Mobile, he didn't have to exaggerate. It was real.
Page had a troubled childhood. It landed him on the wrong side of the law and into reform school.
And if he wasn't the age that he was, if he was a little bit older, he wouldn't have gone to Mount Meigs juvenile detention hall. He would have gone to jail, and the whole story of Satchel Paige would have been different. So he had some good luck in the fact that he was young enough to actually benefit from it, because at Mount Meigs he was able to find another obsession, which turned out to be baseball.
When he emerged from Meigs, he had the talent to enter professional baseball. Soon, he was signed by the Chattanooga Black Lookouts of the Negro Southern League.
His exploits were the talk of these leagues. So he moved up gradually, and by the late 20s, he was in the Negro Leagues. And, you know, one of the great names in black ball, virtually weeks after he had started playing. That's how good he was.
Newt Allen, considered by many the best second baseman of his era, remembered his first confrontation with a young fireballer.
Our team first played against him. He struck out 19 of us at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He threw just that hard. And his delivery was different. He came from the side, and he threw his leg up and looked like he's throwing around his leg. He was looking at his foot and the ball to buy you. He was an awful good pitcher.
It didn't take long for Satchel to arrive at the highest level of black baseball when he joined the Birmingham Black Barons of the Negro National League in 1927. Jimmy Crutchfield, then a rookie outfielder, was one of his teammates.
And the first game I played behind Satchel, we were playing the St. Louis Stars. They were considered the Yankees, the black Yankees of our baseball. We'd played them 3 ball games, and the scores were about 21-2, 19-0, 16-1. And on the 4th day, Satchel pitched. I stood with my arms folded in the outfield practically all day because nobody could pull Satchel. And he was something to watch.
He threw so hard. He threw so much harder than anybody else. That's what they were talking mostly about, the speed. And then later on, they started talking about control.
He had a lightning fast ball, and it seems that when the ball would get to the plate, it would go up just a little, just enough for you to miss it.
And it was here in the South, the legend of Satchel began to emerge.
We were going out to the ballpark riding in cars. And we were speeding. The cops came up on a motorcycle, pulled us aside. We want to know, where in the heck are you guys going? We said, we're the Birmingham baseball players. He said, you are? He says, where's Satchel? We said, Satchel is just ahead of us. He said, come on. Right to the ballpark. That's how he stood down there in Alabama.
As the Depression engulfed the nation, fewer fans could afford to attend ball games and fewer teams could afford to pay players' salaries. While Satchel's legend spread, the Negro Leagues were in dire trouble. By the early 1930s, Satchel landed with the Pittsburgh Crawfords, where Gus Greenlee, a local entrepreneur with deep pockets, assembled the most storied black ball team of the time.
I would like to tell you about Gus, because he was just like an angel sent down from up on high to me. It was in 1931. I had been playing with Indianapolis ABCs. We weren't being paid. And the word got out that there was a big shot out in Pittsburgh that was forming a team out there. And he wanted to get some new ball players. So Satchel had already joined the team. And he spoke about me and 2 or 3 other guys. They advanced me $50. Oh boy, that was just like something from heaven.
We had quite a strong club. With our outfield, we had Cool Papa Bell, Ted Page, and Jimmy Crutchfield. All very good ball players.
We were good enough to beat most teams whenever we wanted to. I remember that we were so good that we got overconfident. If ever a team beat us, it was because we got cocky, overconfident. We just beat everybody. The people just didn't realize the type of a baseball team that we had. We had good defense. We had Josh alone, Josh Gibson. And we had good pitching. And then too, if you have Satchel pitching and you have a good defensive ball club, you're going to beat a lot of baseball teams.
By the mid-1930s, Satchel Paige was a commanding presence in black America, but white audiences hardly knew him. It would take the fabled encounters with pitching legend Dizzy Dean to catapult him to national stardom.
And that's where he gradually became known to the white baseball world, because word got back. Little by little, you'd see his name in the New York Times even. You know, you'd see it not only in the black papers like the Chicago Defender or the Pittsburgh Courier, you'd see it in, you know, these great white papers, Chicago Sun-Times, whatever. Very briefly, you know, a little agate type, you know, Satchel Paige defeated Dizzy Dean, but those little mentions were worth millions in publicity to the Negro Leagues.
During the Depression, white major leaguers were as eager as their black counterparts to make extra money in barnstorming games following the World Series.
The people hadn't seen blacks and major league all-star teams mix too much in those days. So we always had large crowds. I think we played 10 games. Now, we knew that we could play baseball with anybody.
We played against Dizzy Dean and his brother in Cleveland, and they had a sellout crowd, and Satchel beat Dizzy 2-1 in 12 innings.
After Dizzy Dean's encounter with Satchel Paige, Dean paid tribute to his barnstorming counterpart, and baseball took notice.
And I know who's the best pitcher that I ever see, and it's old Satchel Paige, that big, lanky colored boy. Say, old Diz is pretty fast, and you know my fastball looks like a change of pace alongside that little bullet old Satchel shoots up to the plate. Anyway, that skinny old Satchel Paige with those long arms is my idea of the pitcher with the greatest stuff I ever saw.
They were very respectful of one another, and listen, it was a good thing for Diz too. That was a good payday for Diz. Really, really good.
In one game, the score stood 0-0 after 10 innings, despite Dean's .325 batting order. "If you ain't gonna give us no runs, Mr. Dean," announced Satchel at the end of 10 innings, "we ain't gonna give you no runs. So you better get beds and coffee ready because we is playing all night."
I saw him pitch. We were in Chicago. Saw him pitch in Chicago against Ruth. When Ruth came up, Satchel threw him a fastball in the head that over the right field fence. Well, in the head like hedges, you know, like hedges were high like those trees there. Ruth hit the ball over those trees on him. And Ruth hit it over the trees, and he looked him all the way around. And when he got to home plate, you know who shook his hand? Satchel shook his hand. Stopped the ball game. Stopped the ball game till a kid could bring the ball in so Ruth could sign the ball for Satchel. He was just that kind of showman.
Another place where whites began to see and appreciate Paige's talent was in the California Winter Leagues.
I remember we were playing in California, and I was with Satchel Paige's All-Stars, and we were playing the Major Leagues All-Stars. And we played 3 Sundays, playing only on Sundays out in Hollywood. The first Sunday we played, we made $196 each. The second Sunday, we made $206 each. The next Sunday we played, we made $215 apiece.
Here was this great pitcher, and then his catcher was Josh Gibson, and they would go on tour, and everybody knew about these people, and it was very interesting to have the top white players in the major leagues play against them. They drew big crowds, and this is how the legend of Satchel actually was enhanced, because the top guys had to hit against him, and they came back saying, wow, you know, the guy can pitch.
It was in one of those games that a young Joe DiMaggio first encountered Satchel Paige while playing for the San Francisco Seals of the Pacific Coast League. After he reached base on a single, it is reported that a Yankee scout at the game wired New York, "DiMaggio all we hoped he'd be. Hit Satch 1 for 4.
He was an individual that could walk out on a baseball mound and throw strikes and throw it hard and get guys like DiMaggio out and those kind of great hitters And I think DiMaggio said at one time he was one of the greatest pitchers he ever hit against.
Satchel's fame even reached the Caribbean, where an obscure Dominican dictator, Rafael Trujillo, was assembling a team that could dominate the Dominican League. He lured Satchel to the island, and Satchel brought with him some of the Black League's finest talent.
We went down to San Domingo, and one year, and I shouldn't say this, but I'm gonna say it. I like to broke up the Negro League because it's paying good money. It's paying good money down there. I had one of the world's greatest black baseball clubs down there, and we had to win. We didn't know we was playing in politics.
The president of the team, he gave $100 for every pitcher winning game, and Satchel like a pitcher every game.
He got all the best ball players, he thought, and for him to win, his team to win, that'd give him more prestige.
I said to the president of the team, I want to pitch because Satchel, he want to pitch every week. We have 4 pitchers, so he's ready to pitch every game.
One time we went over there to play him, and you know the ball players used to get together. We're all from the States. We'd go by where the ball players live and kind of socialize a little, talk about old times and things. And we went over there hunting for Satchel and them and couldn't find them. So a little kid on the street, they know all the business. He said, it's down in the carcel. C-A-R-C-E-L, that's jail in Spanish. Trujillo had put them in jail that night before they're gonna play us so they wouldn't rouse around.
After the series was over, Papa Bell told me the story. He says the general came up and said, you know, say, look, you play for the presidency. Say, we don't lose. So he's walking around and say he took his big 45 out, boom, boom, down in the, court. Judge says, I said, I want to get the hell out of here. So how are we going to get away?
But they were all scared to death. And I wonder what would have happened had they lost. One of the great unanswered questions in Satchel's life.
Give us 25 minutes to get together and be on the dock. And we was together in 25 minutes and got us to Puerto Rico. And then a clipper, they come got us, and I never have been back no more outside of that.
When Satchel returned at the close of the Dominican season, the Negro League owners were furious with his Caribbean escapade, and especially his ability to entice many valuable stars from other teams. They banned him from the league. Satchel responded by barnstorming, secure in the knowledge that his name would draw a crowd.
Everybody in the United States wanted to see me pitch, till I didn't hardly miss a town or a city or stop at any place.
He had his own team, the Satchel Paige All-Stars. He actually outdrew Negro League teams later on when he would barnstorm.
Satchel Paige was kind of a legend, but legendary because he toured the country year after year after year, and everybody knew about him.
Soon, there was another call from south of the border.
Mexico offered them such fabulous salaries. You see, there were 2 multimillionaires, the Pascual brothers, I believe the name was. So they got after our Negro players.
He played, I think, on the Agrario team, and they were a terrible team, but the owners of the league wanted him to play for them so he could make them better, so that there could be competition.
Everybody wanted to see Satchel, and that's what he was a drawing power. He was a drawing power for all the teams.
It came down to the championship game. Satchel Paige pitching against Martin Dihigo. I mean, you talk about a matchup. These are the 2 greatest pitchers, arguably, in history. Not only black history, but white history. And they hooked up in a scoreless duel. 7 innings, they each shut out the other team. Satchel could barely lift his arm. He had been hurting throughout that whole season in Mexico City. But he gave it everything he had. This was Satchel's last game for a while.
Word trickled back to the United States that Satchel's arm was badly damaged and his future in doubt. There was just one team willing to gamble on Paige.
Satchel hit his arm around 37, and Wilkie in 1938, Wilkie hired Satchel and sent him out west. We had a team, we called them the Little Monarchs. So we sent them west. They played in the Northwest, and they were barnstorming with this ball club. And they would, when Satchel would pitch 3 innings, they wouldn't hit the ball because they for the show. So Satchel told them about that, after that month and a half up, he said, I feel pretty good, said turn them loose tonight. He struck out 19. Called Wilkie that night and said, I'm ready.
With a healthy Satchel Paige as the centerpiece of the team, the Kansas City Monarchs were destined for greatness.
We had a great rivalry because they represented the best in the West, and we represented, the best in the East, other than the Homestead Grays. And when we get together, we try to, knock each other's brains out. It was usually a real good game.
You wouldn't have a chance standing in against him if he would play his mind games. When the Monarchs played the Homestead Grays and he faced Josh Gibson. The great story being, of course, that during the midst of this World Series, he did the old Satchel riff that he had been doing for years, called his players off the field so that he could pitch one-on-one, mano-a-mano against Josh Gibson. Struck him out on 3 pitches.
As the drawing card of the Kansas City Monarchs, Paige finally found a situation that fit his unique persona. At the core was the friendship that developed between Satchel Paige and team owner J.L. Wilkinson.
It was actually like a father-son relationship, really. It really was. And he had great respect for Satchel, and Satchel had great respect for him.
With Paige as their premier pitcher, Wilkinson's Monarchs began to dominate the Negro American League.
Satchel must have been throwing that ball in his prime, that was 100-some miles an hour. See, with that ball club, he came back too. See, we got the Hilton Smith and the Andy Cooper, the Booker McDaniel. We got a ball club.
In addition, a crucial element of Wilkinson's operation was barnstorming. And with Satchel Paige, Wilkinson had a star who could fill stadiums from Denver to Winnipeg.
He arose to the occasion. I don't care where it was. And if there's a lot of people in the stand and you're playing a good ball club, he would do it.
He would put on a show for you. And I think that's the reason why he developed that hesitation pitch. That was a crowd pleaser. And so anything to please the crowd, if you to strike out somebody in a crucial situation or to get somebody to hit into a double play, Satchel's always up for that, and very rarely did he fail.
He was the most natural guy on the pitching mound that I'd ever seen. It just wasn't nothing wrong he could do on the pitcher's mound.
Paige settled in Kansas City and married Lahoma Brown. He enjoyed the remarkable nightlife around 18th and Vine, where Count Basie's orchestra held sway over an unparalleled jazz scene. Paige was now at the pinnacle of celebrity in Black America.
Kansas City has a thriving black population, but he liked to run in society circles because he used to be featured in the black newspapers on the society page because black baseball was high society to black culture in the 30s and 40s.
With Wilkinson promoting his star pitcher to white and black fans, Satchel Paige became a national figure.
Before the war, the average player in the Negro Leagues only made maybe $200 a month, and he was making $30,000, $35,000. So he was much better paid than everybody else because whenever they advertised him to pitch, you'd always have 5,000 or 10,000 more people in the stand. So they paid him very well.
And at that time, he probably made the most money any baseball player ever made in the history of baseball, more than Babe Ruth, certainly more than Bob Feller, because he pitched all these exhibition games all over the world.
As Satchel's reputation grew, important national magazines praised him. They raised the possibility that he would be the ideal candidate to integrate Major League Baseball.
This was a time when the league was changing now, because society was changing and the baseball culture was changing. This is the 40s. We're getting close to integration here.
On one occasion, Satchel set off a furor in the black press. He claimed he couldn't afford to join the major leagues and give up his considerable barnstorming income.
He said, it might be better if we put an entire team of black players into the big leagues rather than scattershot one by one on different teams. And he was reviled for that, and he had to give an apology before the 1945 East-West game because people thought he was coming out against integration.
When integration finally came, Brooklyn Dodger owner Branch Rickey decided not to sign Paige. Instead, he chose Satchel's rookie teammate Jackie Robinson. The two men were very different, and Satchel must have envied Robinson's good fortune. Yet, teammates remember Paige's joy at the news, which ended decades of segregation.
He was so happy that Jackie was signed. They were so elated that somebody was signed. This is what Satchel got to be thinking. We have to sign Jackie. Sooner or later, they're going to sign me, because I still got enough to offer.
The signing of Jackie Robinson created an insatiable appetite among baseball fans eager to see the new black stars. Satchel Paige and Bob Feller took advantage of that interest with a major barnstorming tour.
I had some of the best ball players, including Stan Musial with me, and Bob Lemon, Jim Hegan, Eddie Lopat, Mickey Vernon, who led the league in hitting a couple years.
In left field, they had King Kong Keller from the Yankees. Center field, they had Stan the Man Musial. In right field, they had Big Jeff Heath from the St. Louis Browns. Their pitching staff was Bob Feller, Bob Lemon, Johnny Sane, and Big Mike Garcia. That was some kind of team, and we held our own with them.
I thought, well, if I just got the best black players against the best white players because of the racial rivalry when this war was over. And we toured all over the United States and played in the major league ballparks above the Mason-Dixon line, which we had to do in those days. And we had 2 DC3s. We played 35 games in 28 days. We traveled around. We played in Yankee Stadium on a Friday night and a Sunday. We drew over 100,000 people at major league prices in 2 games.
Everyone that I talked to that hit against him, you know, the outstanding hitters that were on, would be with the Bob Feller All-Stars after the thing they'd play Satchel Paige's group. Every one of them had, you know, great things to say about him, and he was really tough.
You know, he arose to the occasion. I don't care where it was, and if there's a lot of people in the stand and you're playing at a good ball club, he would do it.
Frankly, I don't think I got a hit off him. But Satchel's a great pitcher, and he had great control. They tell me a story about down at Columbus, Ohio. Satchel was pitching down there, and they were in the outfield, and they told the outfielders saw they had a hole in the fence about this big, and they told Satchel that take him to dinner the next evening if he could throw that ball through that hole. And would you believe that he did it on the first pitch?
After the war, the soldiers returned home, ready to enjoy the life they left behind. They embraced Major League Baseball. Finally, black fans also had heroes to root for. First, Jackie Robinson integrated the National League. Later in 1947, Bill Veeck, the dynamic new owner of the Cleveland Indians, signed Larry Doby, bringing integration to the American League.
And so he signs Larry Doby. And he was amazed by the 15,000 letters threatening his life that he got that were all based in stupidity, bigotry, and prejudice. But the one that really got him was the genius who went to the trouble to put excrement in a box and mail it to him.
Well, Bill Veeck asked me about Satchel. I said, well, I pitched against Satchel for years, and he certainly is good enough for a big league ball club, and we can use him.
Paige had 2 strikes against him: his reputation as a troublesome individualist and the fact that he already pitched over 20 years. Bill Veeck wanted a winning ball club and was banking on Satchel's talent and baseball savvy. But first, he had to convince his manager, Lou Boudreau.
So Dad took a pack of gum, put it on the plate, and invited Mr. Boudreau to watch Satchel Paige throw 7 out of 8 pitches across that pack of gum. Well, it wouldn't matter if Attila the Hun had been trying out for that club. Anybody with control like that, Boudreau was going to sign. And so, you know, he put on a very impressive display. Satchel was fearless.
And Bill Veeck knew that you couldn't lose a quarter signing Satchel, because Satchel had enough to show. And all of those people that had been going to see Satchel, they got to come see him when he pitched in the major leagues. So the ones that had been going to see us in the East-West game and things like that, they were coming. And then the other people that had heard about Satchel, they were coming and they were curious too.
The press, by and large, except for a couple of periods of time, Dad and the press had a great relationship, except for Taylor Spink. God bless him. Now, he couldn't come right out and say, I don't think that Satchel ought to be in this league. So what he did was come out and say, I don't think a guy of advanced years should be in this league, and it's making a mockery. And you know, Dad, he absolutely couldn't resist a stuffed suit. If there was a pompous, unctuous personality somewhere close, Dad would find him and take the hat pin and so, you know, Taylor Spink was absolutely tailor-made, if you'll pardon the expression, for Dad. He was a great target, but he was a very powerful man. The Sporting News was, back in those days, the Bible.
To bring in a rookie of Paige's age casts a reflection on the entire scheme of the operation of the major leagues. To sign a hurler of Paige's age is to demean the standards of baseball in the big circuits. Further complicating the situation is the suspicion that if Satchel were white, he would not have drawn a second thought from Veeck.
After every Paige victory, I would send Spink a telegram. 9 innings, 4 hits, 5 strikeouts. Winning pitcher, Paige. Definitely in line for the Sporting News Rookie of the Year.
The Sporting News will make no change in its original editorial except to express its admiration for any pitcher, white or colored, who at Paige's age can gain credit for 5 victories over a period of 6 weeks in any league, major or minor. But it cannot express any admiration for the present standards of Major League ball that makes such a showing possible.
I was in Chicago one time. He beat the White Sox. I think he shut them out. And the ballpark was more than full, Comiskey Park. He pitched great ball for us, and Satchel helped us a great deal. He still had real good stuff in 1948.
1948 was a remarkable year for Paige.
He's a perfect relief pitcher because if you brought him in and you needed to have the lead protected, he wouldn't lose it. I think he only lost 1 game.
And Lou Boudreau walks to the mound. That's all for Christopher, and he's motioning for Satchel Paige. We'll see if the great Satchel Paige can stop the Braves as he makes his World Series debut. Satchel winds and delivers. Home swings. It's a grounder to short. Boudreau to first, and that's it. Satchel Paige has done it.
With Satchel's help, the Indians won the 1948 World Series, and Satchel Paige was named Rookie of the Year. Cleveland celebrated their beloved Indians with an unforgettable ticker tape parade. And for Veeck and his team, it was the culmination of a remarkable journey. However, the following year was far less successful for the Cleveland Indians, Bill Veeck, and Satchel Paige.
when he was with Cleveland, Mickey Vernon was able to wear him out. Just, I mean, hit him with reckless abandon. And we were trying to get that over, you know, Satch, how come, you know, you had so much difficulty with Mickey Vernon? He didn't know who Mickey Vernon was. And then we just said, well, he plays for, you know, so number 17. Oh, that number 17, he's a bad man. He's a bad man.
But in 1949, Satchel lost a little off his fastball, and we had to release him because he wasn't successful.
Maybe so. But Satchel finished the season with a stellar 3.04 earned run average, with a club that slipped from first to third place. 1949 was also Bill Veeck's final year with the Indians. He was forced to sell the club, but by then baseball's greatest promoter and baseball's greatest showman forged a lifelong bond.
He loved people who walked, as we would say today, outside the lines and were a little different. And those were the people that he related to because he walked outside the line. There were no lines as far as he was concerned because he, in his complexity, was a very simple man, and he connected in the most basic ways to Satchel Paige and also in the most eloquent.
Bill Veeck loved Satchel Paige. He would have done anything for him and did very much for him.
And my father admired Satchel Paige as a man probably more than as a pitcher. And that's an amazing thing. But he always would talk about his grace.
Paige returned to Kansas City and once again took up the life of a barnstorming ball player with the remnants of the Negro League. Even at this stage of his life, he remained a powerful attraction. At the same time, Bill Veeck was trying to raise money to buy another big league franchise.
There was something said about St. Louis. It was first in shoes, first in booze, but last in the American League.
The Browns had a following, a small one, but loyal. Boy, they loved the Browns, and they were the underdog, and they tried real hard. And you know, the amazing thing is that in those years, the Browns were really hard-pressed to draw over 350,000 people for the year.
Veeck got his club in 1951. His goal, win games, entertain the fans, and pack the ballpark. He immediately signed Satchel Paige to a St. Louis Browns contract.
He captivated the fans in St. Louis. They loved him. He got along extremely well with the players. So there was never any resentment or any problem there. And he was such a gracious elder statesman that, in fact, they loved the guy.
He was a good showman in the sense that when he came in from the bullpen, he'd walk very slowly, just building up all our anticipation. And he would have probably made a very good actor on the stage.
He was in demand at the various functions, and I can remember I went with him at one luncheon, and he was answering questions, and one of the questions from the audience was, well, Satch, you know, you tell us to come on out and see you pitch, but we don't know when you're going to pitch because you're a relief pitcher. And he said, sir, he said, with this team, I pitch every day, so you can come out, you can see me.
And I saw him many times with the Browns between 51 and 53. There is one time when I saw him in relief. He came in the ninth inning to protect a 10-9 lead over the Yankees, and the hitter, Johnny Sane, had 3 balls on him. They pulled Gene Bearden and sent in Paige with a 3-0 count, and he fanned Sane on 3 pitches. I tell you, that guy was incredible, incredible.
He had great, unimaginable control. I used to see him once in a while fooling around, and Clint Courtney, the catcher, would use a wooden matchbox as home plate, and Satchel would throw balls that were strikes over that wooden matchbox. He had uncanny control. He had great knowledge of pitching. Of course, he was an old man when I met him, and he had been pitched in the Negro Leagues for years and years.
By the 1950s, Veeck's promotions were legendary, and his ageless pitcher Satchel Paige was a huge part of them.
And so he thought that a guy of his advanced years ought to be sitting down when he wasn't working. So he put him in a rocking chair because there was always a connotation of the grandfather, the kind of avuncular figure sitting on the front porch rocking. That wasn't lost on Dad. And since Taylor Spink had declared that Satchel Paige was indeed a senior citizen and not worthy, well, you know, Dad could flick a little ash in Mr. Spink's eye by putting him on the dugout in a rocking chair, calling him Grandpa, and then having him walk in and strike out the side.
Paige's value to the team increased as he began to play the role of elder statesman. Paige had a profound impact on his manager and younger teammates.
Dad would say, Leroy, talk to them. Keep talking. Keep them loose and talk to the kids. Tell them about game situations. It's very simple. It's the best thing in the world. He was just a bench coach. They just didn't call it that.
Satchel Paige was a great storyteller. And I can remember so many things that we would be going on the train from St. Louis to, say, New York. Well, Satchel would set up the camp in the Pullman area, and now the players would begin to assemble around him and talk, and he began to weave these stories. And I mean, the bigger the crowd, the larger the fish got that he caught, and so forth.
That's Satchel Paige. He was so well versed in telling stories. He would keep my whole team up at night, telling stories all night long.
And he would jangle along, and he always had a storyteller in his pocket, Tom Thumb. And he'd pull his pocket up like this, and you would talk to Tom Thumb. Tom Thumb would tell you stories. He would answer. And so you'd say, well, Mr. Paige, what was it like to pitch to Luke Easter? And he would say, well, let me talk to Tom Thumb and find out exactly what the story is. And you asked Tom yourself, and he put his hand in his pocket, and the pocket would come up, and you knew Tom Thumb was in there because Satchel was doing what he did to hitters. He was beguiling you, he was romancing you, and ultimately he was going to sting you.
Paige's relationship with Veeck gave Satchel a unique status.
He would do anything for Satchel Paige. I can tell you some stories about Satchel Paige, and where I would find him an amount of money, you know, for not doing the same things everybody else on the team were doing. And Bill would never take a nickel of his money. He was tough following the rules that everybody else wanted to follow. That's all. Now, once he put the uniform on and all you do is hand him the ball and he'd go out and pitch Satchel, he would do that, but you couldn't tell him how to pitch, or you couldn't tell him anything, because he had his own style of pitching, and Satch did it his way. Sugar Cane, one of our pitchers, said to me, in one of our meetings, he said, Marty, why do you make us run up and down the track here and Satchel Paige don't have to do this? Sugar, you got me there, but I'll tell you one thing. When you get 65, you can do what he does too.
Paige compiled an admirable record in St. Louis despite the Browns' modest talent, and Casey Stengel selected Satchel for the All-Star team. The following year, he had 10 saves for the hapless Browns. Prior to the 1954 season, Veeck was forced to sell the Browns to a group of investors who wanted nothing to do with Satchel Paige. Once again, Paige returned to the barnstorming circuit in the upper Midwest, but by then, that world had changed too. He now pitched for the Harlem Globetrotters and even more obscure teams, just to feed his family. Thus, it was a great relief to Paige when Bill Veeck acquired the Triple-A Miami Marlins in 1956. Veeck's first call was to his old friend, Satchel Paige.
Let me ask you this, Satch. You know, a great many years ago, not too many years ago, you pitched for Cleveland up there and did a tremendous job for them. Do you feel that right now that you can throw that ball just as good as you could then?
Yes, I do, Jack. I really believe I can throw it just like I did then. I throw it a little better because I don't got a little older and I know more men. See, everybody come up on me. It's the first decade, and this is about my seventh.
He was a celebrity when he came down here because everybody knew Satchel Paige.
And then I played against him when he pitched at Miami of the International League when I was with Montreal. And Satchel was playing for Miami. So I got to see a legend. He was a tremendous pitcher and a tremendous person. And boy, to say that, hey, I knew Satchel Paige, that's quite a thing.
He was a situational type pitcher. He had a rubber arm, could pitch every day if you needed him to. Whatever he was needed for, he did. If they needed him to come in and pitch the ninth inning in relief one night and start the next day, he would do it. Because it would take about 2 shakes of the arm and he would be ready to pitch again. It was unbelievable.
The Satchel Paige Bill Veeck promotion team was rolling as well.
He dropped in and Satchel Paige dropped in, both via helicopter.
At the time that it happened, it was the largest minor league crowd in history, 56,000 and change. The Marlins were playing the Columbus Jets at the time. And of course, playing at the Orange Bowl, there had never been a baseball game in the Orange Bowl at that particular time. And nobody really complained about having to sit maybe 800 feet away from home plate. But it was just a great night. And the Marlins won the game.
Sash, do you like to pitch down here in Miami where it's good and hot?
Yes, I like it. I like it very well down here. I can just get off the bench and pitch down here.
Satchel Paige intrigued baseball fans throughout the International League from Montreal to Havana. In 1956, he compiled an 11-4 record with an unbelievable 1.86 earned run average, the best in the league. Satchel Paige pitched 2 additional years with the Miami Marlins.
Well, Satch, I think myself and a lot of other people Sunday got a big thrill when they watched you out here pitch those last 2 innings against Buffalo in that first game.
Yes, Jack, that was my first try, since we started the playing out there. But I wasn't quite at myself at that time. All I had was control. I didn't have nothing on my fastball.
You look pretty good to me, and I think that a lot of people figure, well, maybe this is Satch's last year. Maybe he's not going to be as good as he was last year. But I think you showed him out there Sunday that you're just as good, if not better, than you were last year.
Well, I try to keep up like that, but Jack, I don't think this is my last year. I think I can play baseball about 15 or 20 more years.
1958 was Satchel's last season with the Miami Marlins. The new management proved less understanding of Satchel's undisciplined ways and even cut his salary despite winning 10 games. It was time for Satchel to move on. The first stop was Durango, Mexico, where Satchel Paige, the actor, co-starred with Robert Mitchum in a post-Civil War epic, The Wonderful Country.
I don't know what to do. I don't know where I am. I don't know nothing.
How many Apaches were there, Tobe?
About 20.
And not Fuego?
Some sub-chief named Magus.
So did you get Magus?
Get him? Didn't even see him.
He remained in the public eye with a much-touted autobiography, Maybe I'll Pitch Forever.
It was as important as the Saturday Evening Post article that comes out in the mid-50s, which has Satchel's rules. Don't look back. Don't angry up the blood with fried meats. Go easy on the vices. The social ramble ain't restful. No, this is the zen of Satchel Paige. And it only happens when the white media is ready to accept him.
And in 1965, he had one more day in the limelight.
Charlie Finley hires him to pitch one game, come out of retirement, pitch one game for the Kansas City Athletics. Originally, they had him just in the bullpen in a rocking chair. This was going to be the gig, That didn't go down too well among the fans. They were chanting for Satch. They wanted him to come in.
He pitched a ball game against Boston. He gave him one hit, the innings that he was in there, and you know who got that hit? Yastrzemski, double off the left field fence. That's the only hit he gave up. And this guy got to be 50-something years old.
Paige delivers. Bouncing ball to the shortstop's right. Campaneris digs it out. Strong throw to first base. He got him. 3 up and 3 down. Paige is retired 7 in a row.
Satchel Paige bowed out of Major League Baseball that night. The 3 scoreless innings in Kansas City were a fitting conclusion to his big league career. It was now time to assess his ultimate place in the game.
Everybody had heard a lot about Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson. And so people started writing in and asking, why weren't they in the Hall of Fame? Why weren't they there?
the pressure for admission of Negro Leaguers to baseball's Hall of Fame became overwhelming.
I was inducted the same year along with Jackie Robinson in 1962. It was time. Time was overdue.
Paige's stellar record and reputation made the strongest possible case for admitting Negro Leaguers into the Hall of Fame. Once the decision was made, Paige was the unanimous first choice.
1971, Satchel Paige. I would tell you if I knew how old he was, but I don't.
At the end of his life, Satchel had the satisfaction of knowing he opened the doors for others of his generation to enter baseball's Hall of Fame. And his unique and brilliant life in baseball would never be forgotten.
Because he's a legend, one of a kind. There'll never be another one like him. Tall, gangly. He was made for baseball. And, he pleased so many people. And again, once you saw him, you never forget him. So I think that's why and he pitched for so long. That's why people will always remember him.
So we have to cherish people like Satchel Paige for what they did, for what the game has become. Guys who played for the purity of the game, but also a man like Satchel Paige who realized what it could do for him as a man. It could make him a man that he never thought he could be when he was growing up in Mobile. Doing that as a black man in the 20s, 30s, and 40s was probably the hardest thing any American can do. Yet he did it with such elan and such style that he's remembered today, and he'll be remembered 1,000 years from now.
Satchel would have been in the top 10 pitchers, maybe the top 20, maybe the top 5. He's one of the best pitchers in history, had great control, great stuff, very smart, knew the hitters, had great delivery, and was very, very, very deceptive.
He's the only man who ever threw 35 pitches, 35 different identifiable pitches. And he had easily 100 times that many retorts.
Watch old Satch. Don't worry about that, Johnny. It took me 20 years to get that pitch.
Satch, some folks say it took you 30 years.
Confidentially, Johnny, I think it's 40 years.
In a game measured by statistics, Satchel Paige's impact was immeasurable. For his accomplishments and his style and his ability to produce under pressure time and time again, he will be remembered and revered as a baseball immortal.
Satchel was a fella you would very seldom lose in big games. I remember we were playing Yankee Stadium one Sunday, and I guess we had about 45 or 50,000 people there. And they got Satchel in the hole where it was 3 men on, nobody out. So I was a team captain, so I asked for the ball, and the catcher gave me the ball, and I walked over to Satchel, and I told him that the players and all were hoping that they would get you in a situation like this because you were such a pop-off, great showman. And he said, they did. I said, yeah, and I just tossed him the ball. He went back and they had a pitch and he threw 9 balls. He struck the side out. And then he walked over to their dugout and said, now go back to Philadelphia and tell that.